Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome to the Healing Generation Institute podcast. My name is Ariel Jimenez Bustos, and I'm the current network coordinator for the National Compadres Network. I first want to start off by saying that it's an honor and a privilege to host today's plática and conversation. It's important that when we talk about healing, that we lift up the voices and experience of our young warriors. But it's also important that we acknowledge that those experiences, they're not isolated, but they are connected. They are connected to the generations that came before us. I think it's important that we mention our maestro Jose Montoya, that he wrote a beautiful poem talking about el círculo. And in that poem, he outlined the different generations that came into that circle in search of healing. He first talked about the cholos, the generation of cholos that came in all tattooed, sleeved up, that came in bald-headed, hair slicked back, but came in search of healing because they wanted to heal for themselves. He also mentioned the generation of practitioners that came in with their degrees, that came in as social workers, as counselors, as teachers, as lawyers, but they also came with some wounds that they wanted to heal. And lastly, he talked about the generation of healers, the people that came in that wanted to learn about how to fire tend, that wanted to learn about their traditions, wanted to relearn their native tongue, but more important, they also wanted to learn how to heal and how to bring that healing back home. So we say this because before we listen to our young warriors, that it's important that we have a voice now because of the generations that came before us. We want to acknowledge and lift up our parents that started their healing journey in order to break cycles, in order to make sure that trauma wasn't transferred to the next generation. We also wanted to lift up our elders, that Maestro Jerry Teo always remind us that they might be the long walkers and the long talkers, but they always guide us in our healing journey, and they always walk with us in that same journey as well. And lastly, our ancestors. We want to lift up our ancestors because we carry with them every single day. We might not know their names, but we carry the genetics with us. We carry that bloodline, but we also carry the values and the teachings that they left behind us. When Maestro Hector Sanchez Flores talks about the 7 generations before and what they did in order for us to be here today. Which brings me to today's generation. We have the honor and the privilege of having 2 of our La Cultura Cura fellows with us here today, that we're going to get a little bit of an insight of their healing journey, their experiences, but also that the advice that they want for their generation and future generations to come. So with that, we welcome A.B. Ozuna Barons, who is one of our fellows for the Young Woman Warrior Project. And we also welcome Diego Sanchez Ramos, who is one of our fellows for the Joven Noble Youth Academy. So with that, I'll go ahead and just start off with a little bit of introductions because I think it's important. I want to make sure that my mom que no me regañe, right? When we would come into our relative's house, she would say, before you go play with your favorite cousin, it's important that you acknowledge everybody and that you do a level conocimiento. So with that, AB, do you want to start us off? Share a little bit about maybe your journey, a little bit about your family. You know, who are you? Where do you come from? And who do you represent?
Of course. So, hi, my name is A.B. Ozuna. Who I am a non-binary 16-year-old from Eastside San Jose. I use they, them pronouns. My family, my dad's name is Mario Ozuna Sanchez, and my mother's name is Plaza Ozuna Barents. I have 2 older siblings, so I am the youngest, and I am very proud of that. Who do I represent? I represent my family. I represent my last name, Ozuna. I represent the voices in my community that I have helped share their story before. And yeah, I represent my ancestors and those who came before me and sharing their legacy. And yeah, I think that's all there is to me.
No, thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. And I do want to say that in the past, you know, I consider Mario Ozuna Sanchez one of my biggest mentors. I've sat in Círculo with him. I've also have received the privilege of being a co-facilitator with your older brother, Miguel Fernando Ozuna. And now I get the privilege to also share space with you, which don't tell them, but that's my biggest privilege. So welcome.
As it should be, Ariel, as it should be.
And going to Diego, if you don't mind introducing yourself as well. I know we have history. We've sat in circle together. You know, we've sat in sweat lodge together as well. But is there anything that you want the listeners to know about you? And also same question to you. You know, who are you? Where do you come from? And who do you represent?
My name is Diego Manuel Sanchez Ramos. My dad is Hector Flores Sanchez Ramos. He always uses a lot of names, and I can never keep up with that one. And my mom is Lucila Ramos Sanchez. My dad works with the National Compadres Network. He does something over there. I'm not exactly sure. He might be important. I don't really know. But I love him a lot. And my mom is a professor at the University of Santa Clara. So I got some big shoes to fill, but I try my best over here. I also represent my nana, Selena Sanchez. My grandma, she means so much to me, especially during this pandemic. I really think it's important to shout her out because I do know that we don't get to see some of the people that are very important to us during this time. And I just wanted to, because I know she prays for me. I just want her to know that I'm thinking about her too. Another important part of my identity is the fact that I went to Bellarmine. Ariel might know something about that, but the brotherhoods that I have over there are very important to me. The friendships I have are very important, and they keep me grounded sometimes. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you for sharing that, and definitely go Bells. I went to that institution as well. There's a lot of people that I connected to there. Miguel actually being one of them, and definitely starting our healing journey together in that way. Again, welcome to both of you. I'll go ahead and introduce myself as well without my title. My full name is Ariel Juan Carlos Jimenez Bustos Perez Vallejo de la Cruz, and I say that name proudly. You know, before I disliked how long it was. But I learned, you know, with the National Compadres Network and actually with Hector Sanchez Flores, who taught me that those last names are a reminder that I come from 4 grandparents and not just 2. So I come from Ocotlan, Jalisco. That's where I was born, but I was raised here in East San Jose. My roots on my maternal side go to Ocotlan, Jalisco with the Huicharicas and also, you know, my Mexicano roots. On my dad's side, they go to Briseña, Michoacan, with the Purépechas and the Tarascos, and not knowing what fully that means, right? And I say that because in my identity, I'm 100% indigenous, I'm 100% Mexicano, and I'm 100% Americano también. So uncovering, recovering, and discovering my indigenous roots, like Maestro Jerry Teo teaches us. But definitely, I want to make sure that I showed up here 100% of all of me, and hoping that both of you show up 100% the way you always do. But with that, we wanted to go ahead and get started with some of the questions, you know, some of the deeper questions. I think when we sit in circle, it's easy for us to connect in that way. Now we're forced to do it a little bit different virtually. But let me go ahead and start with AB. You know, the conversation of healing for the younger folks might be something that we might not call it healing, but we're healing every single day. But how do you define healing in your life, in your family, in your community? And what does healing look like for you?
Healing in my community is it's a bit different than I would say what we practice in Círculo, because healing for me could represent being able to get out of the bed in the morning and sit up and be happy, because that means I was able to heal from whatever happened yesterday, my past traumas from yesterday, and I'm able to start a new day and be happy. And so that could be waking up, being thankful for everything that Creator has given me. So my gifts, even if it's finding a pair of matching socks, even though that never happens in my house. Healing in my family could mean us going out and taking a walk and just talking about our days together. Because even though we're with each other 24/7, a lot of talking doesn't happen. So to be able to have those conversations and connect with each other and talk about what we all could improve on as a family, that could represent our healing as a family. And in our community, there's a lot happening right now, and it's difficult to even imagine practicing healing right now, just because you see everything that's going on the news with the BLM movement, and just not being able to participate in all the marches that I usually would be participating in right now because of quarantine and COVID-19. We had to practice it in a different way. So even if it's just sitting down with someone and hearing their story and hearing where they come from and the injustices that they have to deal with every day, that could be healing, even if it's just listening. So that's, for me, that's what healing represents.
No, definitely thank you for sharing all aspects of those healings, right? And I think, it's important that even when we recognize about our community today, sometimes when we think about healing, we think about healing past traumas, but we also have to acknowledge that there's experiences that we're going through right now that we're going to have to eventually heal from as well, whether their system impacted, whether the community impacted, whatever source it might be coming from. We do recognize that healing definitely needs to happen now, and also prepping for the future. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now I'm gonna dive in a little bit deeper. I know I've seen you perform. I've seen your theater. I've seen you House on Mango Street, Macario. I've seen you do it all. So is there a healing component even with your theater, and what do you want to recommend in terms of that art?
I mean, of course. So I first joined theater when I was 8 years old after my grandfather, Ronald James Barron's, passed away. And I mean, I will always say teatro was the thing that helped me find myself again. Because as an 8-year old losing your grandpa to cancer, it was just, you don't really understand what's happening. You just know that mom's sad and dad's sad and grandma's sad. And so going on stage, it really was the art of becoming a different person, even if it was for an hour, but a person who could just conquer the world and be happy, and being able to transform yourself into the person you want to be outside of the stage. And then you take that and you try to see, okay, how can I be this person in real life? And so you take those aspects and you put them into your real life, even if it's being more confident or saying hi to more people. So theater, and then the community and teatro is just amazing. They're my family. So those are forms of healing for me in theater.
Definitely, I appreciate you sharing all of that, because I think that also speaks to the transformation that we want to see within ourselves, right? And sometimes that we gotta reinvent that out of ourselves to bring it back home. That's definitely what we gotta do. And then also, you spoke about your theater family. I think that's really one of the biggest things that I've learned even at the National Compadres Network. That compadres and comadres is that extended kinship. We might not be blood related, but we're bringing you into our home, we're bringing you into our community and into our family. You're our chosen family as well. So definitely that extended kinship is important. Diego, same question for you. I know you've sat in Temescales. I know you sat in Circle. You were part of the Joven Noble Youth Academy, and then the YPAR, the Youth Participatory Action Research Project. But tell us a little bit of what does healing look like for you, and what does healing look like, in your home?
For me, healing, there's like some levels to it. It's not a simple answer. For me, like it all starts with just like making sure you get enough sleep, getting water, getting food, just like trying to get like those basic human necessities in your body sometimes. And sometimes that's difficult. Like I know, especially as students in high school, college, it's sometimes difficult to find time to go to sleep. Like even last night, I didn't go to sleep till real late because I had a test this morning, and like finding time then to eat and all that, or just like getting those basic necessities is, I think, really important on the steps of healing. Because if you're sitting there and you're hungry, you're sitting there and you're thirsty, you're sitting there and you're tired, you're not going to be able to kind of like fully take advantage of all the healing that might be going on around you, because you're not thinking about like, okay, how can this better me? You're thinking about, man, when can I get some fried chicken or something? And so, going off of that, healing for me a lot of times is just kind of talking to people and understanding the pain of the people around you, because a lot of times is when you're hurting or you're scarred or you're having difficulties, it's not just affecting you, it's affecting the people around you. It's like your family and your friends and anyone who's around you is going to be affected by what you're going through, because when you're not feeling good, even if it's just a little bit, people will notice and people will act towards that, because they know that you're hurting. And so if you're hurting around them, they might hurt a little bit too, because they're like, man, someone I really care about is in pain. I don't want them to be. And then they worry about you. And then that worry is going to worry the people around them. So I think finding the root of the problem and kind of like understanding the emotions inside yourself. And then once you kind of pinpoint those emotions, trying to figure out a way of talking about it, or even you said teatro for you was like an escape. It's like finding some way to channel those emotions into something positive. And so I think a lot of times Circulo is really what helps with that. It's because you get to talk about what's happening with you, your cargas with people, and that's really what allows you to heal, because you're able to talk about it, and then people listen. They don't tell you, oh, you got to fix this, you got to fix that, like a therapist might or whatever. You kind of just get to say what is going on with you, why it's hurting for you, and then you have people around you be like, yeah, I know that hurts, but it's okay. And then something about that just kind of really just makes you feel like, you're right. And you're able to then kind of move forward past maybe the anger, the disappointment, the sadness, and kind of move into like, all right, now I know I'm sad. What can I do about it? How can I address this, and how can I make my life better as well as help the people around me? So I think a good part of that is Circulo. And with COVID, I know Circulo is difficult to do, but I do think that is an important part of healing, kind of just understanding your cargas and addressing them and even just talking about it.
No, thank you for that. And I think what you finished off with too is very important. Understanding your cargas. We have a maestra Lidia Doniz that says, I need to understand my cargas, because if I don't know what's holding me back, I don't know what I'm healing from. Right. So I think that's important. I think another thing that you mentioned that I definitely want to highlight is the interconnection, that whatever is going on with us also impacts our circle. I can't say, okay, I'm going through this today and it's holding me down and I'm not in a space to be able to give love, but it's only impacted me. No, it impacts all the people around us. It impacts our parents, our relationships,
Yeah.
our two-legged partners and our four-legged partners, right? It even impacts our spirit animals that walk with us every single day. So I think that's also important to acknowledge. And lastly, it's that self-care that you talked about at the beginning, that talks about, am I getting enough water? Am I getting enough fresh air? Am I getting enough of these elements that Mother Earth provides for us every single day? And I think for me, growing up, I struggled with that, because self-care and selfishness, I didn't know how to separate that. How can I get
Yeah.
some rest for myself when my dad's working two jobs, when my mom's working an overnight shift, and my brother's over here trying to do everything he can to make them proud, right? How do I get a little bit of rest when no one around me is resting?
Yeah.
But it's important that self-care is also self-healing too. And not only do we deserve it, but we're also worthy of it. And we have such good, strong, working family relatives that we also maybe gotta slow them down a little bit too. But let's go ahead and jump into a little bit of the work. I want to acknowledge both of you for being La Cultura Cura Fellows and everything that we ask of you, right? Whether it's running Círculo, whether it's doing the Youth Participatory Action Research Project, whether it's writing a poem, reciting a poem, putting a video together, you both are always just ready to put in work. But AB, if you don't mind speaking a little bit of into the work, how has it been part of joining the Young Women's Warrior Project and being part of those círculos and even the summer internship?
Yeah, of course. So currently, I am working with Jimenez, and we're actually nearing the end of our first portion of it. So I know yesterday we had a círculo about owning our traumas, and it's honestly it's like the best group of people I could have been paired with, because they're all very excited and ready to work with each other, and it's you go in and you don't feel scared to say anything. And most of the time, that's the case with me. I'm very antisocial. So just going in and immediately being accepted by strangers that I had never met before, it was it was a lot of fun. And in the past, I have worked with National Compadres Network since I was in 7th grade, actually, because I would volunteer over the summer with my dad. But I've grown up with around most of these people for almost all my life. because, as Diego said, Ariel went to Bellarmine, and so did my older brother, Miguel. And so I've met him a little before that. But yeah, so I've worked with them since I was in 7th grade. And then I officially worked with them when I was in 9th grade. And I mean, that's where I got to meet an amazing group of both young men and young women. And I got to work with Diego as a fellow. And that was just probably one of the best summers ever, because I got to practice stuff that I love to do and making a little community outside of my family. But yeah, so I mean, National Compadres Network basically like changed my way of thinking about a lot of things and helping me learn how to take care of myself and honor not only my gifts but my baggages as well.
Thank you, and I think that that part is important too, honoring our baggages, because sometimes we always see it as negative and something that we might not necessarily want to carry, but we have to acknowledge that that a perfect life is not free of baggage, but finding the balance between your baggage and your gifts. Knowing that you participated in the Young Women's Warrior Project over the summer and that you've been connected for many years, is there one teaching that really stood out to you that you want to make sure all of the young folks, the young warriors, the next generation of warriors, definitely hear from that circle?
I will say that when I was younger, I would go to my dad when he was giving these presentations or when he was teaching the curriculum to people. And one story that always stuck with me was the bridge story, and it was basically the whole concept is that in my opinion is that you see everything. So like our young people in the community, they see from you and they take what you say into a lot of consideration, and it can one thing you say when they're younger could shape their whole entire life. So in the story, something said around a young man is that you can't trust men. And so then he grows up thinking like, oh, you can't trust me. It doesn't matter like what I do in life. And this is a very long story, so I'm not going to tell it all. But I would just say that to teenagers mostly. If you have younger siblings or like me, I have a niece. Just watch what you say around them, and instead of saying things that bring other people down, like let them know that anyone of any race, gender, sexual orientation is a beautiful human, and that no one should be taken for granted in life. So that for me has to be the teaching that would probably stick with me most, is that we often forget about the young people in our community and just say whatever we want around them, but we shouldn't raise them with the hate that we carry within ourselves.
Definitely. I think the bridge story is definitely one of my favorites as well. And maybe one day we could convince one of our maestros or maestras to even record themselves saying the bridge story so that we could all know the full story, right? But I think at the end of that story, when the young man hears, and that's why you should never trust another man, and then internalizes, and that's why I should never trust myself. It's impactful. I know when I sat in as a participant and hearing Mario say that story, it really resonated with me as well, because in a lot of my relationships they didn't work out because I wasn't able to trust myself. This was too good for me. Let me ruin this before it ruins me. Why do I care so much about this person? So a lot of the times that those messages that we hear when we're little that other people might not think we're listening are important. And I think I also have to keep that conscience, because I got an 8-year-old little brother right now that wants to do everything I want to do, wants to wear my clothes, wants to wear my shoes, wants to
Yeah.
repeat all the phrases that I say. So I have to be conscious what messages I send to him as well. Diego, now going to you. You were part of the Joven Noble Youth Academy, and that connected with circles here in San Jose, but also circles in our partner, communities in Denver with Grasp, and our maestro Cisco Gallardo over there, and also with young folks down in San Diego with Descali and our maestro Macedonia Arteaga. How was that experience for you, being involved with the work at a different level? I know your dad is our executive director at the National Compadres Network, but how was that experience of you getting involved at a different level?
For me, it was because just like AB, I've kind of been around the work since I was a little kid. Not I didn't really understand it until I was maybe 10, but I was around it. I kind of knew what my dad did, and I remember when when NCN moved into the first office, the original office, in that office park. But I remember moving everybody in that day, and I think for me, it was always just like, oh, this is what my dad does. This is what my dad does. This is what he does for work. It was never. I was just kind of there because like they needed help moving the mini fridge up the stairs or whatever. It was like it was never because like I was there to do anything like real meaningful. But when we got to work with the people out of Denver and the people out of San Diego, it kind of when we worked that summer, it really kind of became my work and not just like, oh, this is what my dad does. It became this is okay. This is what I get to do. This is my project. I get to work on this, and especially for the circulo that we had on the retreat, it was a really an odd experience for me because I have spent my all the circulos I'd gone to at that point, all of them were my dad's circulos. They were my dad's friends. They were his mentors. I just was kind of there, and like I would try and learn from it, but it was like there was almost never anyone my age. I was always much younger than everyone else. Everyone was a maestro to me because they had been there for much longer than I had been. I remember like it was like I remember my first circulo. Well, actually, I don't remember it. They tell me that my first circulo, I fell asleep behind my dad, and then at some point I woke up again and stole someone's toothbrush. I don't remember that, but that goes like everything was like it wasn't mine, but like I was just kind of there experiencing it. And this like for me the first time I got to experience the work is like my own, and I kind of got to take it in as like, okay, this is what I get to do. And so especially for the retreat we had, it was the first time I got to sit down with people who were my age, and I really got to understand like, okay, this is what circulo is like. Because like circulo with the maestros is really great because you learn a lot and they talk a lot. But when you sit down with people your age, you kind of understand like the problems that everyone faces, and you're kind of just like, okay, well, I have some of those problems too. I understand that. I see that, and you're able to kind of connect on a deeper level with the people around you because like you especially for me, I felt like I was like, man, I finally got a círculo.
And I think that inheriting your dad's círculo, right? Because I think it's important that you're going as a plus one almost in your eyes,
Yeah.
in your eyes, and definitely soaking up all that knowledge. But I think definitely seeing that perspective. I know when I attended my first retreat and seeing people my age talking about experiences and really resonating with me, like, okay, maybe I'm not the only one going through this. I think that's important to lift up as well, and I'm glad you were part of that as well, and I hope that you own that círculo, 100%, because it's definitely as much yours as it is your dad's. But is there one teaching that stood out to you maybe throughout that experience that you want to make sure that you share with everybody your age?
I think one of the I still have it, but one of the teachings that really resonated with me, especially when like with how we made it, was the mascara when we made the masks. And just kind of having the like the words to describe that you like describe yourself, and then like kind of your cargas or stuff you look down upon on the inside. And I still have it. It's in a little bag right next to my desk at home. But I thought that was an important teaching that I would definitely want to share with other people because the way in which we did it for me was really important. Because I remember we went outside. We had really no idea. This was one of the first ones we ended up doing. We went outside and we were just kind of like sitting at those picnic tables, and like it was like 90 degrees, and I just remember like we were sitting back, and I remember looking over seeing Juan with this just plaster on his face, and like I just remember we couldn't stop laughing. But it was kind of like just that feeling of like comfortableness right there. I think that was important for me just when we went into teachings, because sometimes you can go into a teaching and kind of be like, oh yeah, I got it, yeah, that makes sense, and then just kind of like play it off. But like being there and kind of like that kind of focused us almost, or at least it focused me, and it allowed me to kind of understand the teaching and the people around me a little bit better. So of just this is what I kind of put forward, And these are the cargas, and kind of we get to see what we put forward while making the mass, being joyous, being happy, laughing, all that. And then kind of having the inside, just on the inside, kind of we calm down, we go inside, the mass dry, we put everything, we paint them, and then we kind of get to share what's on the inside too. And then you kind of get that more serious, like, okay, we had our fun outside, and then we come inside, and then it's serious, and we really get to talk and explain to each other what's deep down.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that day, because that day was probably one of my favorite days during that summer too. I remember looking at Juan and seeing the plaster all over his face, seeing it dripping on the sides and onto his shirt, and he had no idea what was going on, because he had his eyes closed and trusted another person to be able to lay down the strips of the plaster on his face. Right. But I think that day to me was one of the best days, because we got to experience all levels of healing. Right. We got to experience levels of healing with laughter, joking around, with, just the overall experience. But then we also got to see the realness of what you were talking about, that inside that máscara, we put some words to represent some of the shame and some of the scars that we held inside that we might not necessarily share with the outside world. But in that intimate space, we were able to share it with each other. And I think it took a level of comfort to allow someone else to be able to place plaster on your face. But it also took a lot of trust too, because a lot of the times we don't let people get that close to us.
Yeah.
But definitely the laughter was one of the most beautiful experiences of that journey too. Let me go ahead and highlight, though, before we go on to the next part, I want to highlight a collaboration that happened between both of the fellowship groups. There was a poem that was written by the Joven Noble Youth Academy that they said, we heard Maestro Montoya's poem about the Círculo, and that poem has the same meaning, the same teachings to us, but it looks a little bit different to us. So you all wrote a poem of what does the Círculo mean to you, and then we actually had asked AB, because of her theater background, if they could recite it for us. So we ended up making a video out of it that we're going to share with everybody. But how was that experience? Diego, what do you remember from writing that poem and how we put together everybody's pieces?
Well, I do remember kind of just sitting in that conference room for a long time and just sitting there and just trying to figure out how we were going to put this together. I remember we spent almost an entire session just kind of sitting there thinking like, okay, who's going to read it? How are we going to do this? And then I think we kind of ended on just like Ray, my brother Ray, I miss you. Shout out Ray. He was like, okay, I'll kind of take the lead with some of the rhymes, because we trusted him with doing some of the rhymes. And I think the rhyming part was important to us because we just kind of wanted to allow it to flow, and we wanted it to like kind of like the original poem. We wanted it to be like meaningful, not just like some words on a paper. And then when we got into the personal bits, it was difficult because I remember we had to kind of think about what we wanted to say, figure out how we were going to say it, and then just kind of put it down in like an eloquent way almost. And that sounds kind of easy, but it's not just like writing a research paper or writing like some sort of critical analysis. It's like when we talk about like what we wanted to put, it's what about ourselves are we going to put into this poem? Are we going to share cargas? What are we going to share? What's on the inside? What's on the outside? Who we are, where we're from, that kind of stuff. And so when we made that poem, I think it was really important for us to kind of share who we were, because this was supposed to be, and I think it is very much so, and because I do like it a lot, this is our poem. This is who we are as a generation. It's kind of like our special thing. I got a word for it, but it's special to me.
Definitely. And I want to highlight too, even the name itself stands out, right? The next generation of warriors. Because I think when you all were putting it together, it also highlighted that you were intentionally connecting to be the next generation of warriors. You said there's generation before us that put in a lot of work, and we're ready to carry that journey on. Now the limitations of that is now you had to put that on a piece of paper. Yeah. Each person was, maybe 2 sentences each.
Yeah.
But I think one of the beautiful things that the poem captures is the spirit. Because I think when you're trying to write, sometimes you're very much in your head. You're very head heavy, that you want to make sure that you're putting down the right words, that it's flowing. Sometimes you're very much in your heart, that you want to make sure that those words that are written down really captures how you felt. But I think you both, all five of you, did that in a way that it did capture what you were thinking, it did capture what you were feeling, but I think it also captured the spirit of what you were all trying to do. And now going to AB, we love the way that you recited that. But how was that experience in terms of reading these words that were written by five other young men? And how was the experience of reciting that for you?
I'm gonna be honest, it was stressful. Um, I remember the day I was asked to even read it. I wasn't supposed to be at the office, but I was going through like probably one of the hardest times in my life. So my dad let me skip school that day so I could be around someone. And we head back to the office, and Ray's all like, I need you to help me do these interviews. And I was like, okay, let's do these interviews. And we finished one of the interviews, and my brother and Ray were all like, we have this poem. Can you just read it? And I was like, okay. And so they recorded me reading it, and they didn't give me a chance to like actually read it. They were just like, go ahead, just do what you want. And I was like, okay, it's a poem, I guess. And I didn't know who had written it. And so I was reading it, and I was like, I don't get how I'm supposed to be reading this right now, because I had never read it beforehand. And I was just like, oh, okay. These are words that a young man can connect to. And I was like, why am I then identifying as a woman? Why am I reading this right now? And then so I read it, and we did a couple takes once I finally understood what the poem was saying. And then like 2 months later, you, Ariel, contacted me and were like, hey, can you record it again? They made some adjustments to the poem. And I was like, sure, let's try this again. And so I remember the night you sent it to me, I actually took my time to read it and go paragraph by paragraph and trying to understand what everything meant, and putting myself in the shoes of Diego or Juan or Ray, and seeing like, where did they come from when they decided to write this, even this word or this comma, or why did they put this pause here? And so it was difficult because I am intact with both my masculine and feminine side, but I was putting myself in shoes that I just could never imagine being in. And so reading it, it took me, I had 20 takes. It was very difficult to choose which one I wanted to send through, just because I felt like I couldn't do it justice. But by the end of it, it took my dad being like, you're reading this not for you, but for someone else's story. And it was that whole transforming again. So transforming yourself into the point of view of who's reading it. And so it took me having to literally be like, I am this person right now. Let me share what I feel like would be going through their minds. And so it was stressful, but I'm very happy you guys liked how it turned out. I'm very grateful that you guys thought of me to read it.
And we thank you. We think you did an amazing job. And I'm sure all those 100 takes all came out equally amazing. But we definitely wanted to make sure that we highlighted that project of how the collaboration took place. But also, for the listeners to really get an insight of the mind of the next generation of warriors. So just to give a little bit of background, AB Ozuna definitely performed it. And we have some of our young men, part of the fellowship, Diego Sanchez Ramos, Christian Andres, Juan Gureca, Jose Zaragoza, and Ray Alaman, that really put their spirit into this poem. So we're going to go ahead and take a moment for the listeners to be able to hear the poem, and definitely hear the amazing job that AB Ozuna did with performing it.
I come after the generation of healers. So why am I so traumatized? We carry the baggage of our ancestors, and it took us a while to understand, but we finally realized. We realized that it's not our baggage to carry, so it's okay to let go. That we need to come together in circle in order for us to heal and grow. Heavenly green rolling hills, a home environment so hectic and chaotic, people not realizing I too was artistic, intelligent, and poetic. What Maestro Montoya called the flor y canto, that song and dance, It was in Circulo that I realized that I finally had a second chance. I got a chance to show people that I too was a blessing with something to offer. I learned that there is medicine in crying, there is medicine in tears, medicine in laughter. From a circle that showed me and my friends that we are strong, to a circle that taught us what it meant to be a man and that stereotypes can be wrong. Now, being able to speak my mind, be calm and tell my story, being connected to elders and mentors that want me to do the best for my community. A place where I got free food and got to leave class for 2 hours a week. To a place where I was quiet and shy, but eventually got the courage to speak. Speak about the struggles, the pain, and the shame that I would carry. A place where I met new friends and people that I now call brothers and see as my family. A place where I got introduced to the 4 sacred elements: water, air, fire, and earth. A place where I got reconnected and started to believe in my own worth. Someone once told me that Circulo is about honor and about being a man of your word. That we need to learn from our traumas and blessings in order to make progress and move forward. Second, we have to believe that we are sacred just the way we are. That we need to come together in circle to overcome our downfalls and go far. Because when we encounter our downfall, it is when anger comes out, and that's when you feel the fire. But we keep climbing that mountain, you keep going higher. Because we are fighters, we are all warriors, we are all survivors.
So again, we just want to thank everybody for definitely listening to that poem. AB did a wonderful job of performing that, really capturing the spirit. And I think our 5 young men did an amazing job of putting all their experiences together to be able to capture it in one journey. So I definitely wanted to highlight that. Didn't get lost on me that there was a lot of hours, a lot of labor, a lot of trust that went into even creating that poem, because they were putting down the experiences that they felt, definitely uncovering some of the scars that they might carry, but definitely coming together in a very beautiful way to create more medicine that they could share with the community. But with that being said, the name of the poem is The Next Generation of Warriors, which is really what we have in our hands right now. But really taking it to that next level, and I'll start with Diego first and then ask AB that same question right after, is Diego, if you had a chance to give one piece of advice to the next generation, or even maybe a younger Diego, what piece of advice would you give them?
So I love this question, and I think it's good that I think about it, because I think at some point I'm gonna be a maestro too. So because whenever I receive kind of advice or like stories from the maestros, it's always kind of like in this way of, they have this old like wise way of talking. They've lived much longer than I have, and they have a lot more wisdom that they have to share. And so for me, whenever I listen to what they have to say, I always just trying to absorb as much information as possible so that I could be kind of like them. Because as I grew up, I kind of saw these great men tell stories about how to be better men, and I kind of just saw them, and I looked up and I was like, that's what I gotta be. I gotta be like them so I can be a maestro, so I can. And I think as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm still pretty young, I'd like to think, but as I've gotten a little bit older, and the advice I think I would give to a younger me is, you don't have to be them. You are you. You are special. You are sacred. You are who you are. And if you live your life with dignity and respect, and you show love to the people around you, that is in essence what it is to kind of be a good person, be a good man, be a good woman, whatever it is. And so I do think that's really important for, I think, the younger generation to understand. Maybe some people don't have that problem. Maybe some people saw that, and that's just something. But I do think that's what I would tell the next generation is, don't be me. Don't grow up and try to be me. Be yourself, but live your life in love.
Live your life in love. I love that. But I think that's important too. I remember one of the first interactions that I had with, with Maestro Jerry Teo, and he said, "Mijo, you're sacred just the way you are." And I've heard him say it so many times, but every time he said it, I felt it, and it was genuine. And I remember even hearing him speak, and he's like, "You don't got to lose 10 more pounds. You don't got to look lighter. You don't got to look happier. You don't got to do any of this. You're sacred just the way you are." So I say that because what you said right now reminded me of that 100%. You don't have to be this gran maestros.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the next Papa Bear, the next, Maestro Jerry Dale, the next Hector Sanchez Flores. You could be you, and that is enough. I think that's definitely important. AB, now going to you. If you were going to pass on a piece of advice to the next generation, or even speaking to a younger you, what piece of advice would you give them?
I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, like Diego said, like all the maestros and maestras I have heard talk in my life have spoken like it feels like they're singing a song every time that they talk, and I just am not capable of that, so I won't try. I think growing up, always feeling like you have to be 2 steps ahead of everyone, or growing up feeling like you have to be like twice your age just because of what I've gone through in life. Now I'm able to like go back into like my immatureness and like my silliness and just be able to be like who I've always wanted to be, even as a kid. And I think right now in the climate, our youth is having to grow up 2 times faster than they should, having to put a label at themselves at such a young age and figure out who they are at freaking 9 years old, which shouldn't be a thing. If I could say anything to my younger self and to the youth of today, it would be don't try to rush your childhood. Because for me, I mean, if I could just go back and redo my childhood, I would. And just play more with my sister or do more stuff with my brother or go out and make more friends and play tag with them when it was still considered normal to play tag. To be able to be that immature self who doesn't have to take responsibility at the moment, who could just like literally let their wings spread and do whatever they want to do. That's probably what I would tell them. Like, don't try to grow up so quickly because you never realize it's not what you want once you grow up. Because I just look at my teatro family. I work with a lot of adults, and because they were in such a rush to grow up or they were forced to grow up so young, they're now at like ages like 42 able to go back into their childhood when they're with us and be able to be that child that they always wanted to be. So I would say that don't take your childhood for granted because you'll miss it once it's gone.
Don't rush your childhood. Definitely, if I could go back and redo my childhood, I definitely will. I think that's one of the things that you remind us of every single day, to not forget to smile, not forget to laugh, not forget to play a little bit. So thank you for always serving as that reminder to us. And now, going back to Diego, a deeper question. You talked about being sacred just the way you are and not having to be anybody else. There was a maestra in Salinas that asked me, we never asked the young men and the young women and our young just warriors, when did they realize they were sacred? So that question goes to you, Diego. When did you realize you were sacred?
So I would like all the listeners to know that I feel as if Ariel here asks me this whenever I see him, and so I give him a different answer every time. Um, I'm kidding, but I do feel like my answer does change every so often, just because like you kind of think back and you kind of think like, because whenever you ask me this question or whenever anyone asks me this question, I think about times where I felt like I was sacred. So I take that as the question is, what is the time where especially I knew that I was sacred? And so what I'm going to share today is my love of basketball. I've loved basketball since I was a kid. I remember watching March Madness. You should watch it. It's a great tournament. I watched that with my parents, and 2008. That was the year that really sparked my love of basketball. And I remember playing at the Y, and I remember my dad being one of my coaches. And he put so much effort into coaching, because we had like a team that was double the size any of the other teams. The teams were normally like, I think, 7 kids. Our team had like 20. So it was really difficult to get everybody to play. So they ended up splitting us into 2 teams, and somehow my dad found himself managing both teams of kids in one practice and then splitting them up on the game days. And so I remember him spending so much time, and anyone who knows who my dad is and knows him at all knows that he loves to be organized. And so he got everybody color-coded wristbands. And so before the games, he would write down, like, he would split the 2 teams up. There was like 4 color wristbands, and whatever wristband you had, that's the quarter you went in, and everybody knew exactly how when it went seamlessly. But he put in a ton of work into making sure that the teams were not just stacked on one side. He tried to kind of split the talent between both teams. He spent time getting wristbands, writing down who gets the wristbands, figuring out when to sub people out so that everybody gets an equal amount of playing time. And I think as I grew up, I realized the amount of effort it takes just to do that, just to figure out substitutions and having wristbands, and even just controlling 25 and 6-year-olds, which, if anyone has ever tried to do that, it is not an easy task. Just him doing all of that just because he knew that I loved basketball. And at that point, I loved basketball more than anything in my life. I still love basketball. And he put so much hard work and effort just so that I could go to basketball practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then go play on Saturday morning with my friends to play the game I love. It really showed me that I was special, I was sacred, I was a blessing, because he was willing to do all this just so I could go out there for 3 hours a week and play some basketball.
Thank you for sharing that too. I definitely know your dad, and definitely, being an organized person. But I think his love for you translated into the love for basketball, and that effort definitely, although it seems like a lot, it came from a good place, right?
Yeah.
And even just within my own experiences, the love that my dad shared for me came out differently than the way that my mom loved on me, than the way that my brother loved on me, and the way that my sister loved on me. So the fact that you're able to recognize that his love for you and the sacredness that he saw in you came from the amount of effort in order for you to be able to connect with your love of basketball is beautiful. Because sometimes those stories get lost on us. Sometimes we might think, oh, maybe my dad doesn't love me as much because he's busy, working too much. Or maybe my mom, doesn't love me as much because she doesn't do the things that my grandma does. And we sometimes get so caught up in that comparison that we forget about the little things that they do and the effort that they do in order for us to feel sacred, and in order for us to feel loved. So I thank you for sharing that story. And definitely March Madness is something that we've even picked up at the office because of it being a great tournament.
Yeah.
Now, same question to you, AB. I know that when we're talking about, young folks, the young warriors, we're really talking about the ages of 12 to 26. Right. And you talked about people having to really come into their identity at the age of 9 and forcing them to grow up too soon. But if there's any people out there that might be questioning whether they're sacred, or might be struggling with their identity, when did you find out that you were sacred?
This question is difficult for me because there are so many instances where, for me, feeling sacred is just when I felt the most loved. And I mean, if you know me, I have a really big village behind me of just family members that are like my parents' sorority sisters and fraternity brothers, and my dad's work friends that have just become my tios, my elders. I think for anyone who's struggling to identify themselves or when they feel sacred, I have a little story about when I was 8 years old, and we were in the car and we were listening to a song called Same Love. And at the time, I was getting really sad because I was realizing that I wasn't like other boys and girls. And I just had this very deep hatred for myself because I couldn't just love another boy and I couldn't like feel comfortable in a skirt. And it was the feeling of being abnormal and being weird, and at 8 years old don't know what that means, and you just feel disgusted with yourself. And so I remember being in the car and hearing that song, and just the chorus part, it's just, I will remember the first time hearing it because my mom was like, this song, oh my god, listen to it. And we're like, okay. And I just remember listening to it, and no one saw, but I started crying because it was the first time I had felt seen as a person. And it was like coming to terms with myself that, okay, maybe it's okay to be a little different than everyone else. And as I progressed through the years, there was just a lot of, I could accept that I like other girls, but I couldn't accept that who I was born as isn't who I am on the inside. And it wasn't until 6 months ago that I finally came to terms with myself and being able to come out to my family as non-binary. And it was a struggle because we're going from my parents having this daughter for 16 years to now having to adjust to having a child with a different name, with different pronouns. And this Christmas just proved to me how much I love my family, because on Christmas, instead of getting shirts or hats or records, I was given a binder. And for those of you that don't know, it's an item that transgender, non-binary youth use to compress their chest. And I didn't even have to ask for it. And my mom just got it for me for Christmas. And it was hard because I didn't know how to react. So I was just like, oh, okay. But it was my mom telling me, you're seen, and even though we can't connect to you and what you're going through, we're here for you. And then my little 6-year-old niece had been trying to figure out how to call me tita without making it gendered. And so she gave me a shirt for Christmas that says best titi ever. And I was just like, oh my God. And so I just remember like bawling my eyes out this Christmas because I had never felt so loved and accepted and being able to be myself for my first Christmas as AB. So yeah, that probably has to be the time I felt most sacred.
Thank you for that too. And thank you for being willing to open up that way and share all of yourself too. I'll tell you that you're our favorite AB, and we're gonna love you no matter what. And I do wish, that without this pandemic, that we can be in person and really show you the love that you definitely deserve, that you earned,
Yeah.
and all the shower you with love in all of the different ways. I know if our maestros and our maestras would be here, you would have our maestra Susie Armijo hugging on you. You have our maestro Jerry Teo fanning you off and loving on you. And I do want to say that you are, sacred just the way you are, the way that our Teo reminds us every single day. And for anybody that might be listening out there as well, that might be struggling with their identity, that you're not alone, that we're here. The journey looks different for everybody. Healing looks different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it looks different doesn't mean that you have to do it alone. So we definitely want to mention that, and also thank both of our young warriors here that were able to join us in this journey, in this plática, share themselves with stories of their family, their community, stories that are very intimate, right? That we might not get an opportunity to share on a daily basis. But we definitely want to thank both of you. Is there any closing remarks? AB, you just shared a lot right now. And Diego, you shared some personal stories as well. Is there anything that you want to close up with today that you want to leave the listeners with?
I think it's important for our listeners, and I think anyone who's willing to hear this. This world is full of love. It is full of love. You might not realize it right now, but this world is full of love. It might not come. I don't know your situation, okay? You're just listening to some people on the internet, but this love might not come from your parents, it might not come from your family, it might not come from, but there is love out there in this world. All right. I'm not talking about like true love or any of that right now. I'm talking about like the love that kind of keeps you going, that nurtures your soul. That love is out there. And I think it can be really difficult to see that sometimes, even when you are getting it from your parents, your friends, whoever, because you look out in the world and all you seem to see, and you see a lot of hate. And I think especially in this past year, 2020, we saw a lot of hate from a lot of people. But I just want everyone out there to know that there is love out there, okay? And you can find it. You are loved. There is love. So love others.
Thank you. And I think it's harder to see that love right now. But
Yeah.
definitely when you feel it, you feel it. So thank you for that. AB, any closing remarks for you?
Yeah. I think right now, during the pandemic, our teens are having a lot of struggle just being proud of themselves for very simple accomplishments. And I feel like the last remarks I would want to say is that I'm proud of you for getting up this morning, for getting through your school day, for even if it's just you're attending your classes. That's a big step for some people right now. And you're seen, you're loved, you have value in this world, and you're sacred. And just don't take your everyday gifts for granted.
Thank you. Thank you for that as well. I think we take for granted the getting up in the morning every day. There's one constant thing that, our maestra Deborah Camarillo reminds us is Tata Sol, our grandfather's son that wakes up every morning. Whether we see, grandfather's son or not, he is there. Whether he's hiding behind the clouds, whether it's a rainy day and those lights might not come through the window, Tata Sol never takes a day off. And we don't take that for granted because, sometimes it's a struggle for us to get up in the morning as well. Yeah. But we don't want to take that for granted. And definitely, how Diego said that when we find that love out there, that love in our community, in our home, in ourselves, we could definitely wake up a little bit better. So I want to thank both AB and Diego for joining us today, for being willing to share of your experiences, and also announce that this is not the last time that you're going to hear from Diego and AB. We actually wanted to start off the youth podcast with both of them because they are going to come on as co-facilitators and co-hosts. So in the next couple of youth podcasts, you might hear those familiar voices. You know who they are. You'll get to know them a little bit better. But we definitely wanted to say thank you to all the listeners today. Thank you all for listening to the Healing Generation Institute podcast. We do think that it's important to definitely have the youth voice in all aspects of healing, to acknowledge that the youth are not alone. We do belong to a community. We do belong to a family. And also that our experiences, and I'm speaking as a former youth leader, I'm speaking as a former fellow, that our experiences definitely shape up our healing. And healing comes in a lot of different forms. So with that, we want to say thank you for listening today. We also recommend that you follow us on all social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook as the National Compadres Network. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram under at La Cultura Cura. But we just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to both of these beautiful warriors that are really ready and have already taken on the work. Thank you again for sharing the way that you all did. And I can't stress this enough. I look forward to hearing you both share again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.